Hello and welcome to today's workshop, Arts in Boston with Gallery 360. This workshop is brought to you by Pathfinder. Pathfinder is an extracurricular program for incoming first and second year students at Northeastern, and we provide a safe and inclusive space for students to discuss and pursue their passions. On our website, you can find links to the Pathfinder applications for first and second years, also applications for moderators, which is open to third, fourth, and fifth year students, as well as recent alumni, and also more resources and information about our program. If you're looking for more of our past workshops, you can check out our YouTube channel or our podcast to see all the workshops we had from the spring semester. And now I'll pass it over to Gallery 360.
Thanks so much, Thandiwe. So hi, everybody. I'm Amy Halliday. I'm director of the Center for the Arts at Northeastern and curator of Gallery 360. Just to mention that there are children playing outside and a dog next to me. So if there are any interruptions, it's just life being lived. I'm sure you know what that's like. So a little bit of an introduction. Really what I'm going to do today is kind of focus in on our contemporary art space at Northeastern, which is called Gallery 360, which I don't know about you, but I haven't decided where the name came from. Is it named after 360 Huntington? Is it like a 360-degree thing? I have so many questions. But it certainly offers a lot of possibilities. And then we're going to broaden out to arts on campus more broadly, and then kind of move our way out geographically to things that you can access easily from Northeastern. And then some other favorites. We'll jump in with current gallery co-op Alex to give some suggestions from a student's perspective of fun things in the arts in Boston. So we're going to kind of start from the center, which is Northeastern, and move our way out. So yeah. So Gallery 360 is a contemporary art lab. We like to think of it as a lab because it's very experimental. It's a space for learning, discovery, for maybe a bit of risk-taking, which we hope you as an audience will participate in, because it's really a place where we want you to think differently, engage with new ideas, engage with new people, encounter difference, perhaps difference of opinion, difference of perspective, and have a space where it's safe to do that. So the gallery is located in the Curry Student Center, or where Curry Student Center and Ell Hall intersect. They actually have this long corridor connecting them, which has been partially reclaimed for this pretty cool gallery space with a big glass wall. So you never know when you might see something like bonsai trees wearing little knitted sweaters, or an interactive work that you can engage with yourself, or an audio piece or something like that. So you're always going to encounter something different. We have about 3 or 4 large contemporary art exhibitions with major local, national, international artists. And then every year we also have, and all of those will have integrated programming and things like that. But every year we also have the CAMD, College of Arts, Media and Design Senior Graduating Show. So you'll see that in the kind of April, May time each year. So this is Gallery 360. It's a contemporary art lab for innovative ideas and exhibitions. But it's also an academic resource. So like a classroom, it is a space for teaching, learning, and research. So you might find yourself in a class that comes to the gallery to engage with the content. You can see students having a discussion based on Helena Metaferia's Against the Sharp White Background, which was an exhibition that explored institutional racism, particularly in the art world. And that was January of last year. And so classes from all different curricula and disciplines across campus came to engage with these issues through the artwork. So using art is really the catalyst for these discussions. So you might come to the gallery in a class visit, but you may also come anytime you want to on your own. It's free, it's open almost every day except Sundays. And there's lots of ways that you can engage with the teaching and learning and programming there. It also becomes a site for a lot of interdisciplinary research projects. So we'll have faculty working together around related issues. We might be creating exhibitions and programs that are collaborations with other offices on campus. It's also a hub for campus and community programming. So we will have a lot of different programs linked to any exhibition, from a fun opening reception with the artist speaking about their work, to things like artist talks, workshops, networking events, really a full range of things, symposia, conferences, really the whole range of possibilities for what programs could look like. And of course, a lot of those have been virtual. So an example, we partnered with the regional New England Contemporary Art Fair area code, which was a COVID responsive art fair that was held during the summer. And a lot of that programming, which I helped to curate as public programs curator in collaboration with them, was virtual. And so we had, for example, virtual panel discussions on topics such as art in the expanding digital space, or the state of contemporary art in New England. So you'll see that we have a variety of in-person as well as digital programs that you can jump in on. Now, another thing I wanted to mention is that Gallery 360 is also a great place to either apply for a co-op or be a student worker. So we tend to have one student worker at any time, being in that space, monitoring the space, looking after things like the physical integrity of the works, checking that things aren't falling down or don't need attention, but also really being a frontline ambassador, someone who engages visitors as they come in, talks about the artwork, helps people feel welcome, and really makes the connection between art and people. So our student workers are really an important part of the team. And then of course there's a co-op position. So we'll have these 6-month positions where you really get to see behind the scenes of every element of what it's like to run and work in a contemporary gallery space. And this is everything from, extensive email exchanges with artists to hanging a show, which is just, you do it till it's done. It's unpredictable hours, unpredictable problems and creative problem solving that come your way, like trying to lift 100 pounds of textile at an asymmetric angle and then suspend it from the ceiling. But you never know what this work is going to look like. So it's really quite a fun one. And our co-op, Alex, who will introduce himself later, can tell you a little bit more about that if you're interested. So I encourage you, if you're interested in finding out more about the gallery, to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Another job of the co-op is very much thinking through social media campaigns. So you'll see some great work there. Now, moving outside of Gallery 360, to a little bit beyond that, into what is happening on campus. Sylvia Lopez Chavez, who is a Boston-based artist, who did this incredible set of murals at Ruggles Station, which is right in the center of our campus. But it's really, it's both an iconic kind of landmark, and it brings so much joy through its color and its rhythms. But it's actually only one of about 20 incredible murals that we have on campus. So there's a very active program of public art, which is overseen by a public art manager. And I will encourage you to look at this website, which is down here, because they've just launched a fabulous new website about all the murals, where to find them, what they're about, interviews with artists, great videos. So you will come across things from like a raging dinosaur to a small image of Edgar Allan Poe. I'm trying to think of all optical illusions in architectural form, and there are new ones popping up all the time. So public art is a big deal. Sometimes it's mural form, sometimes it's kind of architectural and sculptural, but there's a lot of thinking about how we can actually change our perceptions and our experience of public space through public art. Then I'm going to introduce Alex to speak a little bit more about how you can get involved as a student.
Hi, so I'm Alex. I'm the Gallery 360 co-op, but I'm also a part of Spark, which is Northeastern student-run contemporary art collective. I just finished up as head curator, and now will be the incoming co-executive director. So I'm always happy to plug all the cool things that we're doing. Our main thing that we do each year, or each semester rather, is we put on an exhibition. So our most recent one was called Spark Self-Titled, and you can see it here. Unfortunately, because of COVID, it is a virtual exhibition, but it's in a 3D space, so you should go check that out. The general idea behind that was taking the idea of a self-titled album and then kind of flipping that to a visual medium as a way for both Spark and artists to kind of make a formal introduction of themselves to the Boston art scene. And then also the kind of prompt for our artists had to do with how they define a spark, and using this kind of as a project of co-defining and co-creating some metaphorical significance of a spark. But we do a lot more than just exhibitions. I have a long list here on the right. As you can see in the top photo, we do paint nights. This was our spring break themed paint night. Bucket hats were a real hit that day. We also have a podcast called What the Spark that's in collaboration with WRBB Radio. We did an I Voted sticker contest in collaboration with Northeastern. We also do team bonding events, museum and gallery tours, art exchanges, pop-up exhibitions, artist talks, and we're designing a zine catalog and more. So if you're interested in getting involved or learning more, either follow Spark NEU on Instagram, or you can message me. I'm always happy to talk your ear off about Spark. My email is eubanks.al@northeastern.edu.
So as you can see, our gallery co-ops really are both connected to other arts activities on campus, and where you're able to kind of bring your experiences and your other interests to the work of the gallery. And we've certainly grown and changed and developed with each co-op and the things that they bring, the things that they want to explore. So we're excited about this collaboration or closer connection with Spark. And of course, there's other student art and design oriented organizations like Scout that I know you'll see other resources related to. So there are a lot of ways to get involved. The Mural Club, in fact, our incoming co-op is very involved in the Mural Club. So we keep these connections and they just grow, which is really a beautiful part of Northeastern, is this kind of interest in collaborating and partnering across campus. But that's not all. So let me tell you a little bit about the institutional memberships that Northeastern has access to. Now, some of these might be subject to change, but these two have been pretty stable across time. And these are really helpful for you to know because they can save you a lot of money. So the first museum membership that we have is to the Museum of Fine Arts, which is just around the corner on Huntington. Well, it depends where you are, I guess, on Northeastern's campus, but it's, it's right there. And what I learned recently is that it is the 14th largest museum in the world. I did not know this. I mean, it's big, but I didn't realize it was way up there. And this is in terms of kind of public gallery space, and second only to the Met in the US. So this is right on the edge of our campus. That's a pretty amazing thing to have access to. It has almost 500,000 works of art and material culture. And it's what is called an encyclopedic museum. This idea that it has a little bit of everything, which you can imagine is also a little bit of a problematic kind of concept. And it's something that Peren Dai in her video piece that we just talked about in Dream Boston actually kind of critiques. This idea of it having, like something of everything from every culture. But it is a really incredible place to visit. And there are a lot of things that you'll be able to learn and see through this space. So you can take your student card and get free entry. At the moment, you need to book that in advance with a special code, which can be provided for you. They also have a lot of kind of late night events. I think Thursday they have late opening hours, and there's always interesting stuff going on. So I do encourage you to check it out. It's a museum that's been around since 1870, originally in Copley Square, and then it moved to Fenway back when it really wasn't a big thing. There wasn't a lot developed around the marshes. It was just seen as this kind of like marshy land out there in the hinterlands of Boston. And so I think it moved in maybe 1909. But it is really kind of an anchor of the area now, alongside Northeastern and many of the other institutions that are in the Fenway area too. So do check that out. It's pretty awesome. And I'm sure, and they have temporary exhibitions all the time, blockbuster exhibitions, contemporary shows. And as I mentioned, Helena Metaferia, the artist who did her first solo debut in Boston at Northeastern, will have a show there in the fall. So I encourage you all to see that. The other museum that we have an institutional membership to is the ICA. So that's a little further afield in the Seaport region, although the ICA actually was originally elsewhere as well. That's often the case of Boston institutions. They sometimes move around. So the ICA, it's the Institute of Contemporary Art, but of course, contemporary is always the art of the now. When it started, it was actually called, I think it was the Boston Museum of Modern Art, and was seen as this kind of renegade, relative of MoMA in New York. But over time, it wanted to kind of separate out and really dedicate itself, move away from this term modern and dedicate itself to the art of our time. And it is just an incredible place with its own small permanent collection, but also constantly changing temporary exhibitions, a really awesome set of monthly activities, things like, I mean, the last one I went to, there was like a tango class and there were live art making things, and there's always something going on. There's usually like local DJs. So the ICA really has a lot to offer, and you can also again get in there with your student card. Oh, and then the other thing that's very cool about the ICA is that every 2 years they have something called the Foster Prize, which is a kind of biennial where they choose 2 to 3 Boston artists or Boston area artists, and they really focus in on them. And they say, these are the most important people, kind of emerging talents to be looking at right now in Boston. And they give them like pretty substantial exhibitions. And that's really important, that we kind of celebrate and look at the artists right here. So often folks are like, oh, it must be New York or it must be LA, but there is so much incredible work happening right in Boston. And so it's always exciting to see the Foster Prize and see who the ICA curators and others are watching and presenting to us. So that's the ICA. So those are the 2 that we have institutional memberships to, but there's a bunch of other local spots that I'm going to recommend, and then Alex is going to recommend, and I'm sure we're going to leave so many out, partly because there's always so much new stuff going on. So one that I wanted to mention is the Boston Center for the Arts. So this is in the South End, still, walkable or an easy bus from campus. It's a nonprofit visual and performing arts complex. It has everything from like theaters and live music spaces to artist studio spaces, like affordable workspaces and visual arts exhibition spaces. And one of the super cool things about the Boston Center for the Arts is that it includes this historic building called the Cyclorama, which was this huge rotunda building, which was created to actually show hundreds, I don't actually know what the dimensions are, like hundreds of feet, a huge panoramic painting of the Battle of Gettysburg. And the idea was, and this is like 19th century, this was the closest you could get to kind of cinema almost, or kind of immersive experience before the digital, was the circular painting that you were surrounded on at all sides. Anyway, so it's no longer used for panoramic paintings and kind of immersive spectacles of the 19th century. But what it is used for is both kind of events, book fairs, things like that, and then sometimes incredible installations. So the Cyclorama, just a really fun and interesting part of Boston history that, like I was saying about Boston, just gets like made and remade and reshaped as people interact with it differently. So Boston Center for the Arts, one to check out. Right nearby us as well is the Isabella Stewart Gardner. So we don't have a membership there, but you can, of course, get reduced entry as a student. This is a pretty unique space. And that's because Boston art collector and philanthropist, 19th century woman, Isabella Stewart Gardner, wanted to house her incredible collection of American, Asian, and European art and antiquities in a place that looked like a 15th century Venetian palazzo. So it's not like sometimes what happens in the US is folks build a kind of transfer buildings from other countries, like brick by brick, but this was actually built all in Boston from like new materials and everything. But every detail was carefully chosen and designed to give you the real feel of a Venetian palazzo. And then it's filled, of course, with decorative arts and a whole textile room. That's my favorite. Incredible paintings. I mean, Isabella Stewart Gardner was the first person in the US to own a Botticelli. So just an incredible collection. And it's so amazing to see it in the space and to spend time in this interior courtyard, which is always full of flowers. So when you're in the depths of winter, this is the place you need to come. You need to come, I think it's February or March for nasturtium season, where every one of those windows is hung with these like orange trellised nasturtiums, for example. And they have a lot of great live music here of all genres. And there's just something pretty magical about the space. And if you didn't know, it is also the scene of probably the world, or at least the USA's most famous unsolved art crime. In the 1990s, there was a robbery in which a number of significant artworks were stolen, including the only Rembrandt seascape and a Vermeer. If you know anything about Vermeer, there's only like 35 in the world. So even getting one stolen is kind of a big deal. And these works were never recovered. So it's like the greatest unsolved mystery, and it all took place around the corner. So lots to see at the Isabella Stewart Gardner. You'll notice that there is a lot going on along the orange line. I find that a really interesting and useful kind of line of connection between where I live and some of the things that I like to do around Boston. So for me, it's all about the orange line. And one of the things that happens is very uniquely the only art gallery in a train station, which is the Boston Cyber Arts Gallery, which is actually in Green Street Station. And it is also the only gallery in Boston, I think, that focuses entirely on new media and experimental art and technology. So super cool space, does really interesting things, has different exhibitions every month. It's been closed during COVID, but what they've done instead is to really activate the windows. So there's always something new up during that time. They also connect up to festivals, to site-specific installations, digital installations around Boston. So they're always doing interesting things. And when I first arrived in Northeastern, I went to an exhibition there because some of our own professors were showing at an exhibition at the Boston Cyber Arts Gallery. So if you go to Green Street Station, make sure you take a look at what's going on. A little close enough to campus, you could probably also walk, but also great public transport. You could get to what are called the Sower Galleries. This was a kind of concerted city effort to brand this area as a kind of art and design district. So Sower is really just an abbreviation, which means south of Washington. And you'll find there are about 20 commercial galleries with really incredible original art. A little bit, different tastes, different kind of register and tones for different galleries. So you'll find the ones that really suit your interests. There are also, there's an artist guild with a bunch of studio spaces that often you can actually visit. So there's a lot going on down here. Sometimes there are vintage fairs, lots of other things that happen kind of right there in that Sower district, especially when COVID is not constraining us. But I do encourage you to spend some time there. They have First Friday openings where new exhibitions open in almost all of these galleries. So there's a really wonderful vibe if you want to head down there. And then also around the corner from us is the Tufts School of the Museum of Fine Arts. And so Tufts University actually formed a partnership with the Museum of Fine Arts, which I talked about recently. And they have the School of the Museum of Fine Arts, which offers one of the most important MFA programs in the country. And it's a place where a lot of great artists have their start. And I wanted to mention it because it's walkable. There's a small gallery with really interesting work. And you can see more work on Tufts Medford campus. But I wanted to bring this up because most universities have galleries and museums. And that might not be something you think of when you think of the art scene, but actually so many institutions, and there are hundreds in Boston, they'll have galleries, they'll have museums, and many of them are free. So Harvard, not free, but many of the others are free, and they all have reduced entry anyway for students. And each of them programs, openings, all kinds of cool things. So lots to keep an eye on. I'm going to hand over now to Alex to tell you a little bit about some of his favorites from what he's been exploring in the Boston art scene.
Yeah, so first I want to echo everything Amy just said because she stole like half my recommendations. They're all really great places that I would definitely recommend checking out. Yeah, like I know Boston Cyber Arts was on my list earlier. Also, I'm going to talk a little bit more about SOA, but I'll run through my list from the top. One of my favorite places is Piano Craft Gallery. That's located on Tremont Street, so it's very close to campus. Dorchester Art Project is another recommendation. You would be shocked like just how many local artists get their start there. I can't tell you how many artists I've done research on and realized like scrolling back through their CV that Dorchester Art Project was where they started. They're doing all kinds of cool things. Their gallery is unfortunately currently closed, but they have a lot of other stuff going on. They have a shop, they have studios for artists to work in. They like sell music, they sell like merch, they do a little bit of everything. And then for SOA gallery recommendations, there are two here that I recommend. both of which I'm probably going to butcher their pronunciations, but the Abigail Ogilvy Gallery and the
Ogilvy, yeah.
Okay, and the Liza and Kiani Gallery. Both of those were ones that I've had a chance to check out recently and got talking to a couple of people who worked there. Interesting stuff going on there, but also just recommend SOA in general. The open studios are great, and a lot of the events that Amy was talking about are starting to reopen again, which is really exciting. It's like First Fridays are coming back, they're a little bit more lively, all that good stuff. And then Boston also has a great public art scene. I would highly recommend Underground at Ink Block, has a whole lot of public art in one place. I'm cheating a little bit and going outside of Boston for this one, but Central Square also has a lot. I was there this weekend and saw a mural by Sage Evangelina, who is one of our artists from Green Boston, so it was nice to see that connection. And then also, this one isn't so much as a place as it is an organization, but Now and There is a public art accelerator that does a lot of interesting things. So they're a really interesting group to follow, see what they're up to and what kind of things they're working on. And then beyond just galleries and museums, there's a lot of other cool things going on as well. As far as publications go, Boston Art Review is like your one-stop shop for everything arts in Boston. I highly recommend signing up for their newsletter and you will get like every possible art event going on. I also have a picture from their virtual reception for the launch of one of their publications that if you look really closely, you can see Amy and I in. And then Boston Compass is another good one. They're kind of affiliated with Dorchester Art Project. They're following the same umbrella organization of Brain Arts. And then other organizations, this one I just learned about really recently, House of Venus does right now mostly virtual exhibitions, but they also do pop-up exhibitions and some other workshops. They're run by two recent college grads. Actually, both of these Sower Galleries that I mentioned earlier, the people who work there also run this like in their side time. So kind of a cool little connection there. And then also the Boston Art Book Fair. It's closed this year, but that was at the Boston Center for the Arts in 2019, I guess. It was very fun. So when that comes back, definitely would recommend. I also just have some general notes, some sage wisdom for you all, which is I highly recommend just follow a lot of arts organizations on Instagram, on social media. And that's kind of how you find out about like what new and exciting events and exhibitions are happening. And then the next one's like a really big one for me is always talk to people who are in the gallery or with artists or whoever is there, because they can answer your questions. They have great recommendations for like other places for you to go and check out. And generally, like if you're interested in working in the arts, it's also great networking. But yeah, like I've gone to like open studios before, and just like in each one, just like ask the person in there, where should I go next? And they'll tell you, like they'll give you a great recommendation. You'll go there, you'll tell them, oh my God, like so-and-so just told me I should come here. And then by the end of the night, you met like a whole bunch of people. And then yeah, also don't be afraid of like going to exhibitions and events alone. I feel like that's kind of how I learn the most about like what art I like and I don't like, because you're not really swayed as much by other people's opinions. And then, yeah, the Boston art scene in general, I just say is very vibrant and very interconnected. And I think that's something you realize the more kind of events and exhibitions you start going to. And that is all from me, I believe.
Absolutely. I think that is all from the both of us, and that's a lot. But I wonder if, if there are any questions, we're happy to jump in and answer.
Yeah, thank you so much for this like very detailed and helpful resource. I was wondering, so you source a lot of local Boston artists, but I'm just curious a little bit more what that process is like outreach and what you look for and how you get those relationships for Gallery 360.
That's a great question. So let me take a step back and say how I curate exhibitions in general. So, and also just talk a little bit about the work of a curator. So instead of us kind of looking at proposals that other people send to us for an exhibition, we're generating them internally. We're creating original exhibitions for Gallery 360. And so that means you do have to be constantly looking at new things, going to places, meeting people, thinking through ideas, getting a sense of what people are talking about in the contemporary art world in Boston. So I go to a lot of stuff. So a big thing for me is turning up, going to events. So the exhibitions that I can see at all of these institutions that we've mentioned might expose me to new artists or new ideas. That might then kind of catalyze something in my thinking. When it comes to curating an exhibition, I like to try to start with an artwork that really moves me in some way, that kind of, and so I would often experience a really powerful, transformative experience with an artwork that made me think differently or see differently, or just challenge my perception in an interesting way. And then what I often find is that as I delve into that artwork, it opens up a whole line of inquiry that can develop into an exhibition. So if you think about something like Min Kim's work, that big fabric piece, that was a piece that really opened up thinking through this idea of dreaming Boston. Yeah, so we tend to work on a kind of year 6 to 12 month schedule where we're planning in advance. I'll build relationships both by turning up at events and meeting people, and then looking after those relationships over time, because it isn't really a one-to-one. You don't kind of meet someone somewhere and then be like, hey, you want to exhibit next month? It's really, you build this kind of network of possibilities that are part of your kind of aesthetic and conceptual nexus. And then one day the strands come together in a really interesting way when you're thinking, it would be really timely to think through questions of, I don't know, algorithmic bias. And you've met this artist that did this project at MIT, or you've, connected with these people who can help you think through these ideas. So it kind of comes from many years of building relationships and having great conversations. And then you'll do something like, as Alex and I have been doing this semester, doing studio visits. So going to artists' spaces and seeing their physical works and talking to them about them. And those conversations are what often generate things that become exhibitions, not necessarily immediately, but over time. And of course, one of the hard things is we've been having to do that all virtually. So Alex and I are super excited. We're going to Portland on Friday to do our first in-person post-vaccination studio visit, because there's something magical that happens when you're engaging directly with art and with artists that just doesn't really happen on Zoom. That's why I really encourage you all to get out and see art and be with art. It's great that we have virtual tours and all these programs and things, but the practical, the direct experience of something is so much more meaningful. Any other questions?
I have one that we typically ask to our hosts. So do you have any tips or suggestions for students, specifically first and second year students, because that is kind of Pathfinder's main demographic, or that you feel like they should know about Northeastern, resources at Northeastern, like Gallery 360, anything kind of like that?
Yeah, I would say the arts tend to be really fabulous places for meeting people and engaging with ideas, and yet often they're only known by the group of students that are really engaged with them. So the theater program at Northeastern is amazing. They do some of the most experimental, kind of mind-altering, fabulous work, working with both kind of more traditional scripts and stuff that's being written right now. And so things like getting involved in looking at what's on at the studio theater right next to Gallery 360, for example, just going to one of those productions, sign up, go to one of those productions, see what they're doing. Some of those things, you think maybe you have to belong, maybe you have to already know someone or know something, and you really don't. And I think that's really the story of some of the greatest kind of art that's happening on campus. And Gallery 360 is similar. You have this glass wall so you can see in, but a lot of people think they can't go in. It's free, it's for you. And so I just encourage you to really step into spaces, and to remember that they're all for you, and to not be held back by any presumption that you have of, I don't understand contemporary art, or I don't know anyone here. So that's something I think I would say about resources. Something that I love is the 24-hour chat with librarians that you can have. So if you're doing a paper, or you're trying to source a book, or you're wondering what's in the archives, I've just been really impressed and had wonderful conversations with folks in the library. I think another thing I love about Northeastern is the fact that it's an arboretum. I don't think there's any other urban campus that is basically on an arboretum. So the idea there is that we have enough biodiversity in our trees and plants to qualify as an arboretum. And so this, I think, you can spend some time finding these really beautiful places on campus in the midst of a busy city. There's green space, there's a space for reflection and meditation of the koi pond. You can find beautiful blooming flowers at any one time. That's something that I've really appreciated. Alex, are there any things you think you might want to add?
Besides my obligatory message of join Spark, like I always say, one thing that I would just say in general is I feel like just making the most of your time is really important, because you'll get to just try your hand at so many more things than I think you realize, and things that are like going to be a lot more difficult to just try your hand at like when you leave. So like for example, like here, like I've gotten to just like try my hand at, curating an exhibition or like booking concerts or like all of these things that like I wouldn't get to just like, no one would just like hand you that outside of, a university environment. So like just really take advantage of that while you're here, and like seek out those types of opportunities to just like try something you've just generally been interested in, no matter how much you know about it or don't at the time.
One last thing linked to that is take classes that don't necessarily fit your very strongly defined preconditioned career path. I do find that Northeastern students, it's wonderful that folks are very much thinking about applications and real world problems and like how they'll use these things in industry. But I really want to encourage you to take risks, to take a course that's maybe doesn't fit the path. You'd be amazed at how the connections grow you, and the challenge and the thinking outside the box will inform whatever it is you end up doing. So yeah, I have found that students can kind of come in with a very particular idea of what they're doing and why they're doing it, and everything has to count in this very particular way. But there are ways in which thinking outside the box, taking different classes, taking a risk, following a little interest can also lead you in interesting directions. I think that's it.
Yeah, that's great advice, especially because it has like required things, but it's very flexible compared to other universities. So I think that's important to always remember that you might still have to take a certain like science or literature or whatever, but you can take it in all these different topics and really broaden your passions and experiences. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Sure.
Well, I think that's all we have today. Thank you so much for joining us. It was really great working with both of you. And I'm so excited to go to campus, and I have a class this summer on campus, so I'm going to visit Gallery 360. Certainly, I walk through there all the time though.
Well, we have a great new exhibition coming up that we are just working on right now, which is called A Thread Extended, and it is about relationships that artists have to land and landscape, and the marks that we leave on land and the marks it leaves on us. So I encourage you to come and see that from mid-June.
Sounds good. All right, thank you
Great,
so much.
thanks so much. Bye.
Pathfinder meets every week for roundtable discussions. We also meet weekly for workshops just like this one. So check out our Google Calendar and join in next time. Thank you so much and have a great day.